Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I welcome you to this session of Gita Made Easy. We are on chapter 15 today, Purushottam Yoga, or the yoga of the Supreme Person. So that's a chapter that we'll be looking at, and I'm really excited because this is really an amazing chapter. But before we continue, I'll offer my respectful obeisances to my preeminent Siksha Guru. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vacharam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripatam Aham Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So with that we will begin, but before we continue we will look at chapter 14. The previous session where there was a lot of discussion about the three modes and a very practical chapter where we can actually understand what these three modes are all about. So in the first section we saw three modes, the definition, types, and where am I. And then the second section was more about recognizing a particular mode's supremacy. So when one is in mode of goodness, one has a lot of clarity of thought, one knows what is right, what is wrong. In passion, there's a lot of anxiety and the person may not be very clear in terms of what is right and what is wrong. In ignorance, the person is in delusion. What is wrong he thinks is right, and what is right he thinks is wrong. So he is in complete delusion. So if somebody who's in mode of ignorance, we will see where they are going. So acting and dying within the modes, the third section. So one who's in ignorance goes to hellish planets or goes to lower species. One who's in passion remains on this earthly plane, and one who's in goodness goes to the higher planets, the heavenly planets. And then finally, the transcending the modes, the fourth section. Symptoms of one who has transcended, what is his behavior, how to transcend. So that section was all about how one can actually move beyond these modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So we come to chapter 15, the 15th session, a peak preview of the spiritual world. Yes, that is what Krishna is going to talk about in the first section. First few verses itself, Krishna reveals about the spiritual world and how to set oneself free from illusion. So there also Krishna talks about, he explains this material world and how we can cut that illusion with the axe of determination and knowledge. And the third part, how is Krishna maintaining us? Well, this chapter also, like the previous chapter, has a lot of practical understanding on our day-to-day living. We can realize that how Krishna at every step helps us, maintains us. So that's why this chapter is very fascinating. It's very amazing. It's one of my favorite chapters. Well, all the chapters are excellent, and this is also an excellent chapter. So let's look at the overview of chapter 15. There are a total of 20 verses. It's a short chapter. The first section, the first 6 verses talk about reflection and substance. Like we see that small tree there. So the existence of the actual tree only will reveal a reflection in water. So there is the substance, the original, and then there is a reflection. So there is a spiritual world, and then there is the reflection, which is the material world. And then Krishna talks about transmigration of soul, that is from verse 7 to 11. Well, you would have heard something about transmigration in the second chapter, but Krishna reveals more knowledge about that. And then the third section, Krishna, our maintainer, and there Krishna will reveal that how every moment we actually depend on him. So that's the verses 12 to 15. And finally, the essence. So Krishna reveals here that how in just 3 verses, 16, 17, and 18, Krishna gives the essence of all the Vedas. And if we know Krishna actually, we know everything. So this is what we'll be discussing in the last section. So we'll continue with this about reflection and substance. So material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Like we see this tree, which is actually a real tree standing in a body of water, but the reflection is actually not the real tree. It is just a reflection on water. So that is what this material world is. And so there is another thing that we see in this tree is that if you just look at the reflection, so where do we see the trunk? The trunk is up, the branches are down, the leaves are down, the root is up. So that is why it is an odd looking tree. Well, that is what the material world is all about. So we'll read this beautiful verse, the first verse of the chapter. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhva Moolam Adha Shakham Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So this is the verse where the root of this tree, the whole material world, is compared to an imperishable banyan tree. And the roots are on the top, the branches are down, the leaves are down. So on the top of this tree is the Satyaloka, the abode or the residence of four-headed Brahma. And below that, there is the trunk and the branches. So in the below branches are the Devatas, then below them Gandharvas, Kinnaras, Asuras, Rakshasas, and then below them is Manushya. And then we go to the beasts category. We have cows, we have horses, we have other beasts, then we have birds, insects, worms, moth, immobile creatures are right at the bottom. So this is how this material world is designed as an upside down tree. So for non-devotees, this tree is an imperishable world. So they will continue in this life, they will die, get another body, and they will continue in this material world. So that is what they feel, that is what their understanding, or that's how they lead their life. But for a devotee, just this word Ashva means it will not last even till tomorrow, which means this material world is bound to perish, and therefore they do not really make much arrangements in this material world. And what is towards the end of this verse, it stated whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. So these leaves, we see that any tree is made attractive by its leaves, and this leaf is the Vedic hymns. And what are these Vedic hymns telling us about? So it is meant for those people who follow the Vedas, but they want some material benefit out of those Vedas. So there are sacrifices which are designed to give you a lot of wealth in this material world. A sacrifice designed to give you a son if you want. So like this, or you want to go to the heavenly planet. So there are different Vedic sacrifices which are mentioned, and people become very attracted to these, and they forget what actually the purpose of Vedas is. So they completely disregard that. So one who knows this tree in all actually is the real knower of Vedas. So let's look at this. Now this picture you would have seen that is slightly changed. We have at the bottom, we have that great banyan tree. The root is up, the branches are down. On the top of the root is, we can see, is a four-headed Brahma. But this tree is actually a reflection of the spiritual world. The actual real original world is the spiritual world, and this is just a reflection. And why does it manifest? Why is it there in the first place? If the real world is a spiritual world, why is there a material world? Well, because we have so many desires. We don't really want to serve the Lord. We want to enjoy independently of the Lord. So therefore Lord creates this. So Lord manifests this because we have a desire to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord. And who lives in it? So just those people who follow the Vedas to increase enjoyment in the material world. And they're completely in ignorance of the real purpose behind the Vedas, which we'll see. Krishna will reveal that also in this particular chapter. So even, see, sometimes we may say we should know Vedas. Vedas, it's a very esoteric thing that we know the Vedas. Most of us even don't know what is there in the four Vedas, right? But even those who know, they just get misled that this Veda is about and how we can enjoy more and more in this material world. So those are the people who remain in this tree, the reflected tree. So that is how we can understand this reflected tree. So we have a life lesson here. Reflection may not be factual, but it is indicative of reality. So reflection is not the real thing, but it indicates that reality exists. So experience of this material world and all its varieties, it indicate that there is an existence of the real spiritual world full of transcendental varieties. So this is something which we can actually know from this. Since there is so much variety in the material world, there must be so much variety in the spiritual world, because this material world is a reflection. So how do we free ourselves from this reflection? Because this is not really real. So how do we free ourselves? So number one, we need to do is goal setting. We need to set our goal that we should go back to the spiritual world, right? So that is the goal setting that we need to do. And next step is surrender to the Supreme Person. So we need to surrender. So now the surrender is not possible for one who has a lot of pride. So the quality of pridelessness is required, that we do not expect some honor. When we understand our insignificance, when we understand the greatness of the Lord, then we naturally become prideless. So like that, we can surrender to the Supreme Lord. We give up our lordship over material nature, because whatever we see, we understand that this should be used for my enjoyment. I should get it for my enjoyment. So I should give up that lordship also. So Krishna is giving these 3-step process: GSD, goal setting, back to spiritual world; surrender to the Supreme Person; and third is detachment through attachment. So we are trying to go to the spiritual world, but if we don't leave the material world, then we won't really go anywhere. So yes, we are setting the goal to go to the spiritual world. We also have to let go of our attachments in the material world. So detachment through attachment, that comes through the correct designation. So what is the real designation? Who we are, who we really are. Well, we are spirit soul. Yes, we learned early on. Actually, we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. We are the insignificant servant of the Lord. So that is our original and correct designation. So if we understand these three, then we can free ourselves from this reflection, go back to the real spiritual world. So we have a life lesson. Krishna is giving a formula, goal setting, the GSD formula, goal setting, and then we understand that we have to surrender to the Lord, and then we have to detach with attaching ourselves with the Supreme Lord. So Krishna has given the way. So it is up to us what way we choose. Do I still choose my own way, continue with my own life without really changing anything, or do I go God's way? And then because Krishna is talking about this material world, this is a reflection, inverted tree, banyan tree. So Krishna does reveal about the spiritual world. So this is some new knowledge that Krishna is giving here. That's the 6th verse. Na tad bhasyate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yat gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. So what is Lord saying? He is revealing the information about his home. The supreme abode of mind is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Well, we saw in the previous chapters that how this material world is temporary. It's a place of misery. Krishna says that one who comes to my abode leaves this material world once and for all. So it is like a one-way traffic. Once we go to the spiritual world, we remain there permanently. We enjoy eternal blissful life full of knowledge. This is what Krishna is telling here. And then he says that his supreme abode is not like the material world. Well, in that picture you can see at the bottom that is all a dark place which requires illumination. That's why we have sun and we have moon, which gives illumination during day and night. But the spiritual world does not require that, because all the planets are self-luminous. So it's a very, very special place, and we can get more details about the spiritual world when we read scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. There is, amazing description of the spiritual world. So material world is a temporary residence. Spiritual abode of the Lord is our original eternal home. So this is something that we need to gather and learn from this first section of this chapter 15, that we are in a temporary residence. Let's not treat it as our eternal home. That is the spiritual world. One who knows this is the actual knower of Vedas. And one more life lesson. Usually, many movies, not now but earlier, they would end by saying, and they lived happily ever after. So there will be this boy and girl, and they will struggle throughout the movie, and towards the end of the movie they'll get married, and at the end they will show this, and they lived happily ever after. Well, in reality, it is just a wishful thinking. Only spiritual world is a permanent settlement, because that world is perfect. We are with the perfect Lord, and everybody else is also perfect there. So when we have a perfect person, then we can have a perfect relationship, and that is why we can actually live happily ever after. So that's possible only in the spiritual world. So that was the first section, where we saw that this material world is an inverted reflection of the spiritual world. Krishna is giving details of the spiritual world and is encouraging us to come there, right? And then Krishna talks about transmigration of soul. So if we really do not pay attention there, we really do not understand, then we really have to transmigrate from one body to another. So Krishna is going to reveal more details in these verses from 7 to 11. What is he going to talk about? He's going to reveal my real identity. Well, Krishna did that in the second chapter, but Krishna will give more details of that. And then the change in the body's transmigration means that I leave the old body, get another body. But then there are people who cannot perceive this. In fact, most people cannot perceive this. So Krishna will talk about who cannot perceive and who can. So this is a reality, this is a fact of life, but not all people can see it. So what is my real identity? This is a very, very famous verse, 7th verse of the 15th chapter. Mamai vamsu jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manah shashthani indriyani prakriti sthani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned soul, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. So what is Krishna revealing? Our identity. Mamai vamsho jiva loke. We are all eternal fragmental parts of the Supreme Lord. So this is where Krishna actually confirms that we are part and parcel of the Lord. So our relationship is the closest actually with the Lord. So he is our original source. He is our original Father. But what? Mana Shashthani Indriyani, this mind and the 6 senses, including the mind, we are because being connected with that, we are struggling so hard in this material world. The word used at the end of the verse you will see is karshati. It is very hard struggle in this material world. So this verse talks about our lost connection. Mamai vamsho jiva loke. We are eternal fragmental parts of Krishna. Never forget this. This is our lost connection, and Krishna is revealing this knowledge here, that we are eternally connected to the Lord. We are his fragmental part. And But we are in this material world, shackled by an iron chain. We can see this man. He is shackled to this material world, and the huge weight which one has to drag life after life is borne by the mind and the senses. Is because of the mind and the senses. Prakriti sthani karshati, struggling very hard. The mind has so many impressions, and because of that we have to move from one body to another. So if the mind is in mode of goodness, if it is in mode of sattva, then our activities will be good. If we are in the mode of passion, if the mind is influenced by mode of passion, then activities will be troublesome. And if the mind is in tamas, in mode of ignorance, then what will happen? We'll slide to the lower species of life. We will not have human life. Like some people think that this human form, once we are human, we will always be human in all of our future births. That is not the case. Bhagavad Gita doesn't say that. Well, this shackle by iron chain of this mind and senses, which has shackled us, which has covered our spiritual identity, is destroyed at the time of liberation. So, lifeless in my original relationship, I belong to God. I belong to Krishna. That is my original relationship, which I have forgotten. And Krishna is telling us, he is inspiring us, he is reviving our lost knowledge, he is reviving our original relationship with him. He is telling, Mamaivaamsho Jiva Loke. So, let's look at that. Despite we being fragmental parts of the Lord, why do we still change bodies? Why we are still doing this? So it is explained in this verse. Shariram yad avapnoti yachapi utkramatishvaraha grahit vaitani samyati vayurgandani vashayat. So what is Lord saying? The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aroma. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So this is what is happening. The example given here is as the air carries the aroma. So if the air passes over a flower garden, then the air will smell of the flowers, the wonderful fragrance. But if the same air passes through garbage, then it will really stink. So this is what is explained here, that the living entities in the material world, they carry different conceptions in their mind. There are different conceptions of life that they have. That I want to enjoy this way, I want to enjoy that way. So they have different conceptions. And because of those different conceptions, we keep getting different kinds of body. So we will see this particular point, that consciousness changes according to the mode. So here we see the first one is Sattvagun, second one is Rajogun, third one is Tamogun. So there are different modes which are there, which influence our consciousness. That defines our different preferences or taste, and because of which we keep getting different bodies. So what I want to enjoy, my preferences, accordingly I will receive new ears, I'll receive new eyes, I'll receive new tongue, I'll receive new nose, new sense of touch, and accordingly I get the body. So we see here in this particular picture, which we have seen a little earlier as well. So depending on what we desire, depending on how our mind is influenced, what kind of enjoyment are we looking at, accordingly Lord arranges for us to receive an appropriate body. So if we see that picture of man eating and drinking, so if one does not really have discrimination in what should be eaten and what should not be eaten, if he is indiscriminately eating whatever comes to him, then this human form is not the right form. Then he gets a form of a pig, because the pig does not really discriminate. Whether it is sweets made of ghee, it will relish, it will eat, or if it is stool of an animal, it will eat that also. So it does not really discriminate what it is eating. So what I want to enjoy, my preferences, accordingly I will get a new body with those senses which are appropriate for that. So who can control, who can and who cannot perceive this? So we are constantly, if we were to make a log sheet, how many bodies I have taken, how many lives I have taken? Well, the scriptures say that we are in this material world since Anadikal. Since time immemorial, we are in this material world changing body after body after body. So why some people can perceive and some cannot perceive this? Well, who can? So Krishna says that one who has Gyan Chakshu, we saw in one of the previous sessions where Krishna is talking about Gyan Chakshu, seeing through the eyes of knowledge, that person can actually see this happening, that the body is there based on what the mind desires, or the conception of enjoyment is there in the mind. Based on that, we get another body and another body. So this can be seen only through the eyes of knowledge. By developing spiritual knowledge, by developing scriptural knowledge from the scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, through a bona fide spiritual master, then we can understand and actually experience this in our life very easily. But others who, the word used, Krishna uses the word Vimuda, who is foolish, who has no intelligence, who is fooled by lust and desire, who does not really care about scriptures or hearing and learning from a bona fide guru, he cannot see. They cannot perceive that how they are transmigrating from one body to another. So this is a well-known fact that change is the only constant. So we know change is the only constant in this world, but are we rising or falling with that change? Are we rising in the modes or we are falling down in the modes? Right? So this is for that is for us to assess and know. So we move to the third section. Lord is our maintainer, and these is from 12, 13, 14 and 15th verse. These all four verses are amazing and very, very, they reveal so much of knowledge. So Lord is our maintainer. So what all do we need? If we just make a list at this point in time, what all do we need? We start from the cosmos. We need the sun, we need sunlight, we need fire, we need so source of light we need, and light and heat. Then we also need this planet. We may need a house that, I need shelter or something, but ultimately we see that we take shelter of our planet. We take shelter of Mother Earth. So we need the earth, we need a stable place to stay, and then we need energy. So we need proper nutritious food, which nourishes us. So we need food. And when we eat that food, I need the power to digest that food as well, because that is also very subtle and intricate process. We eat the food, and from that food, the energy is taken in terms of various nutrition is taken by the stomach, goes into the bloodstream, and balance is excreted. So the whole thing is required for us to manage, and we'll see that how Lord is actually helping us in each of those things. So Lord is our maintainer. He is maintainer at the cosmic level. He is maintainer at a very personal level, one-to-one. He is maintaining us, and he is also initiating all activities. So for example, if I have this body and when I die, when I get another body, we will see that a newborn child, when the child grows up, it does not really remember its past birth. We also don't remember our past birth. Then how do we just begin doing our activities? So that is mentioned in the last point. Lord initiates all activities. So we'll see how Lord does that for us. So here Krishna is saying that I am the source of light of sun, moon and fire. Yad aditya gatam tejo jagad bhasyate khilam yad chandramsi yad chagno tat tejo vidhi mamakam. So this is the 12th verse. And Lord is saying the splendor of the sun which dissipates the darkness of this whole world comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire also come from me. So when we see, we cannot imagine our life without sun. We cannot actually imagine a life even without moon. We will see later in verses. And without fire. So all these are essential for us to survive. So Krishna is saying that this splendor of the sun, which dissipates this lightness, so the light of the sun, all is coming from the Lord only. Lord arranges that for us. So that is how Lord is a maintainer at the cosmic level. We see that because of the sun and how the whole world, material world is designed, we have this water cycle. There is this evaporation because of the sun. There is condensation, then the water falls down, there is precipitation, the water flows, some of it is in the river, some of it is in the ground, and that's how all the living entities survive on water. So there is water cycle, there is carbon dioxide cycle. So all of us are emitting, all the living entities, they're emitting carbon dioxide, and the plants also do that. But we also see that there is another process called photosynthesis, which takes the sunlight, which takes the carbon dioxide and produces the life-giving oxygen. So there are different cycles. So not just the carbon cycle, there is something called phosphorus cycle, nitrogen cycle, there is oxygen cycle, of course, water cycle. So there are different ecological cycles which are there necessary for our survival. If they do not function properly, then gradually this world will become inhospitable. We cannot live in it. And that is what so many scientists are talking about, global warming, because it is disturbing these cycles, because we are, as humans, we are exploiting this material world. So that was the ecological cycle. And we also see that this there is so much of radiation which is there, but our earth is designed, our atmosphere is designed in a way that we are safe from most of this harmful radiation. So we see that how Lord has maintained this cosmic world, our world and this cosmos, so that we can live in it. And then Krishna further says, Gam avishya cha bhutani dharyami ahamojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarva somo bhutva rasadmakaha. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. So we think it is gravity, it is gravitational pull, it is different kinds of forces that are in way, and that is how the sun is there, the mass, and there is the gravity is because of that, and there are so many planets, they are perfectly moving in their orbits around their axis. Well, Krishna says that I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. So Krishna is saying that I hold. So even if through science we discover certain laws, if we understand the natural principles, that how these planets are actually staying together and how they're moving, then we need to understand that those laws and those forces which are in play, they actually come from the Lord. And that is how our whole planetary system, whole universe is so stable. So if it was not stable, how will we survive? It will be just like some dust. Unless we hold it, it will just fly away in the air. So similarly, unless the Lord holds all the planets and the stars in their position, they will just, not be there in such an organized way. So that is what Krishna is saying. And he's saying, I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So some of you who have a background in farming or horticulture, or if you do some research, you'll find that this is very well understood knowledge by the farmers and a part of modern science as well, that how the moon helps in making the vegetables in the plants. It helps the sap to move very freely in the plants. So the vegetables, the fruits, the grains, everything becomes more succulent. So Krishna is saying, I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. So Krishna is maintaining at the cosmic level, and now Krishna is our maintainer even at a personal level. Aham vaishvanaro bhutva praninam deham ashritaha pranapan samayukta pachami annam chaturvidham. So what is the Lord saying? Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. So imagine Krishna is saying that he is the splendor of the sun, and because of that we saw that how there are so many cycles, the ecology of the whole of the earth is maintained, and we saw that how he is the nourishment of the plants because of the moon, that the plants get nourished and then the food is ready. But if my stomach is not in order, if my fire of digestion is not in order, then even if I eat, I cannot digest, I cannot gain energy. So Krishna is saying that I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. So in Ayurveda, it is called as Jataragni, the Agni of the stomach. So that is what creates hunger. So if there is hunger, if we eat, it gets digested. Otherwise, it does not get digested and we cannot gain any energy from food. So Krishna is helping us from outside, Krishna is helping us from within. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. And I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, prana aman samayukta. So with the outgoing and incoming air, these are pranas actually. Air of life is the more appropriate word which Prabhupada has used here. And I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the 4 kinds of food stuff. So this digestive fire, it is maintained or it is worked up with the help of these 2 pranas. And then it can digest Pachami annam chaturvidham. Then it can digest the 4 types of eatables. So there are 4 types of eatable. One which the teeth are used to chew. So like we have the regular food, the rice, the wheat, or the nuts or whatever that has to be chewed. Then it is sipped. So that we savour or taste with the tongue. So any food that is sipped, like soup or some juice or milk. So like that. And then we have licked, we have like sugar candy, which is licked. So, and the 4th one is which is chewed and then it is thrown. So that kind of food also, like we have sugar cane. So sugar cane, what we do is we take a piece of sugar cane, we suck on it, we chew and suck the juice and throw the balance. So these are the 4 kinds of food which Krishna says that I help to digest. So this is a summary of all the things that Krishna is saying here, that he is the splendor of the sun, he maintains the planets, he supplies the juice of life to all vegetables, he is the fire of digestion, he is the outgoing and incoming air. With the help of outgoing incoming air, stimulates the digestive fire. So all this is organized by the Lord. Krishna says that it is because of me that all of this happens. So number 1, awareness that for everything we are dependent on Krishna. Shouldn't it bring profound sense of gratitude and humility in us? That for our survival, without this we cannot survive. So Krishna is giving us everything that helps us survive in this body, right? Most of us, we don't even think about this. We just take all of this for granted. So if we now aware Krishna is, that's why he's telling us that what all he does for us. So I'm sure this brings us at least some gratitude and humility for the Lord. And then that is not all. So Krishna will talk about that how he maintains at the cosmic level, how he maintains at our personal level, and then he continues to give more information. This is also a very famous verse, chapter 15, verse 15. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedeshcha sarvairahame vedyo Vedanta krit veda ved eva chaham. So what is Lord saying? So there are 2 parts of this particular verse. We will look at the first 2 lines. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. In all the living entities, sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. I am residing in their hearts. I am seated in everyone's heart. Krishna is saying here, we can see in that picture. So Lord is residing in my heart and your heart. And then what he is saying, mattaha smritir Jnanam apohanam cha. So from me, Krishna is saying, smriti comes, remembrance, jnanam, knowledge comes, and also forgetfulness. So how is that, how does that help us? So we need to understand that we were there in the previous life, a previous body, and then the death comes, and then we get another body. So with this change of body, we forget our past life. We do not really remember anything of our past life. But who was there with us in the previous life? The super soul. He is residing in everybody's heart. So he was there with me in previous life. He witnessed all my actions. He witnessed all my consumptions of enjoyment. He remembers everything. So when I change the body, when I got another body, then Lord gives me remembrance. Hey, hello, you wanted to enjoy like that. So Lord gives remembrance of our past desires. Lord gives us remembrance and whatever is required to start action. So whatever is required to act to fulfill our desire. So Krishna gives us that remembrance. He gives us that required knowledge as well. So sometimes it is said, no, that the child's attributes or qualities are visible right when he is in the cradle, right? Like in Hindi we say, "Poot ke paँव पालने में दिखते हैं." So the child's attributes or qualities are known when he is in the cradle itself. So which means his preferences, even as a young child, the parents would know that there are certain likes and dislikes of the child. There are certain fears and phobias in the child. There are certain things which he is very comfortable with and certain things which he is very uncomfortable with. So like that. So the super soul actually helps connect us, provides that continuation in our lives from the previous lifetime. So Lord gives us remembrance and Lord gives us knowledge, which is required to begin our activities in a new body. So this is how Lord helps us at every step, even life after life. And also, when we do something for others, this is a usual thing. When we do something for others, we want to be praised. We want to be acknowledged. When others do something for us, we think it is their duty. They should have done it for us. But Lord does everything without any expectation. Lord does not even have any iota of expectation. Today we are sitting and reading Bhagavad Gita, but we have gone through millions and billions of lives and different bodies. We are not aware. Krishna did not knock us at any point in time and say, see what all I am doing for you. At least do something for me. Never. Right? So, and even now it is voluntary. We are reading Bhagavad Gita, we are studying Bhagavad Gita. Even now it is voluntary up to us whether we take up the teachings of the Lord or we reject them. Right? So that is the kind of unconditional love that Lord has for us. Lord does everything without expectation. So that is the real unconditional love. So these were the first two lines, and we look at the second two lines. Vedescha sarvair aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. So we saw that Lord helped us maintain this body. Lord helped us when we changed the body from old body to new body also. Lord helped. And if we want to go stop the cycle of birth, death, old age and disease, if we want to stop it, then there also Lord helps us. So what is Lord saying? By all the Vedas, I am to be known. What is the essence of Vedas? What about whom do the Vedas reveal knowledge of? It is about the Lord. So from all the Vedas, Krishna is to be known, that he is that supreme personality of Godhead. Krishna is further saying, indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta. So as Vyasadev is considered an incarnation of Lord Krishna. So as Ved Vyas, Krishna is saying, I am the compiler of Vedanta. And then he's saying, I am the knower of the Vedas. So nobody actually knows the Vedic knowledge or the real meaning of Vedas other than the Supreme Lord. And that is why the Guru Shishya Parampara is so important. If we try to get Vedic knowledge from any Tom, Dick and Harry, we will not get the proper understanding. Because Krishna is saying, I am the knower of Vedas. No one except me knows the Vedas. And therefore, Krishna is saying that I established the system of Guru Shishya Parampara. If you want to receive the knowledge of Vedas, receive in the Guru Shishya Parampara. Then you will know the actual meaning. So we see that how Lord cosmic level maintains, personal level maintains, body after body maintains. And if you want to stop this cycle of body, birth, death, old age, disease, then also Lord helps us. So at every level, Lord is helping us. So He is the maintainer of the soul. We see Bhagavad Gita are the instructions from the Lord, coming directly from the Lord. And we see that Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 18 cantos, there are 12 cantos, 18,000 verses in Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is all about Krishna and his devotees and the spiritual world, right? So Krishna is revealing so much about him that if we are really serious about spiritual life, well, there is so much opportunity is there to do that. So therefore, we can come to at least one conclusion. God is all good. God is all merciful. So thus it is proved. All right. So never again we should try and blame the Lord. We should never criticize the Lord. Therefore, if we scrutinizingly we study Bhagavad Gita, at least we'll come to this point that God, Krishna is all good. He cannot harm anyone. He cannot do anything wrong to anyone. Whatever he does is only good for the other person, and he is all merciful. He always has blessings for us. So with that, we come to the fourth section, the essence. That is the last 4 verses, 16, 17, 18, 19, 25 verses, which is the essence of the Vedas. And this is also very interesting. So what do we see here? The essential meaning of the Vedas in the 3 verses, 16, 17 and 18. Krishna will give the essence or the summary of the Vedas. So those of us who have not read Rig, Sam, Yajur, Atharva Ved, well, today is the opportunity. Just 3 verses, we'll know what is there in them. And then, who knows Krishna knows everything. So this is what we're going to see. Yes. So first Krishna talks about the living entities. This is the 16th verse. Dvav imau purushau loke ksharas chakshara evacha shara sarvani bhutani kutastho kshara uchyate. What is Lord talking about? He is saying there are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. So there is Shara and Akshara. So these are the 2 living entities. So one is in the material world, well, we all have experience, and that is detailed in the image next to the verse. We can see that is our story. That is not anybody else's story. That is our story which is depicted there. We are somewhere in one of those frames. And there's so many frames, we are somewhere in one of those frames. So Krishna is saying that all the living entities in the material world are fallible. That we are imperfect, we are prone to fall down, we are prone to not listening to the Lord. Right? So that is our situation. We are fallible. And then Krishna is saying that there are living entities even in the spiritual world. Or if he thought that only Lord exists in the spiritual world, that is not correct. Krishna is saying that there are living entities like you and me in the spiritual world as well. But they are infallible. So living entities in the spiritual world, they never ever give up association of the Supreme Lord. So there are 2 types of living entities. In the material world, they are fallible. They independently want to enjoy. They do not care about God or God's laws. And therefore, they always remain in the material world. So they are fallible. And then a contrast to them is the living entities in the spiritual world. They are infallible. They want to be always with the Lord. They never want to give up their association with the Lord because it is so much ever increasing bliss. So they never leave the spiritual world. They are always there. And then Krishna talks about himself in this 18th verse. Yasmacharam atitoham aksharada vichottamaha atosmi loke vedecha prathita purushottamaha. Because I am transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. So there are a lot of things that we can learn from this. One, Krishna is saying that I am transcendental, which means a Lord is beyond these modes of material nature. They do not affect him. He is beyond this material world and these material qualities. Krishna is further saying he is even beyond both the fallible and infallible living entities. So some people have this confusion that I am this material world. When I get liberated, I'll become God. No, never. I am in this material world. I am fallible. When I become perfect following the instructions of the Lord, then I become infallible. I go to the spiritual world, but I continue to remain a living entity. I do not become God. So Krishna is saying beyond the living entities in the material world, beyond the living entities in the spiritual world, Krishna is none of these. He is beyond. Krishna is saying, because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. So whenever the Vedas refer to the supreme person, they indicate Krishna, right? So if someone is having a difficulty in this statement, that Krishna is saying, I am the greatest. Well, if Krishna is the greatest, how can he express that in any other way? Superlative. So if he is the greatest, if he is the best, if he is the highest, right? He is the most perfect. God means most perfect. God means all good, all loving, all perfect, all knowing, all powerful. These are all superlative terms. They cannot apply to you and me. They only apply to the Lord. So when Lord is talking about himself, this is very natural that he will speak in this language. Otherwise, we will not understand. Otherwise, we cannot really comprehend. So Lord is perfect, and that's why he is giving perfect knowledge. It is not that, out of any ego that Lord is saying this. Lord is, he does not have any ego, right? He is the creator of this universe, not only just this, but the unlimited universes in the material world, and also from him manifests the eternal spiritual world, and yet he can take the position of a chariot driver, of a charioteer for Arjun. So Lord has no ego, absolutely. Right? So because we have ego, we try to impose that on the Lord and see it from that point of view. So though fallible, we are in the material world, we are fallible. So though fallible, we can still achieve all success just by following the supremely perfect person, Sri Krishna. So if we catch hold of the feet of the Lord, even we have so many imperfections, because now we are trying to connect to the perfect person, we become perfect. We become infallible. So from fallible, we can become infallible. Most confidential understanding of Vedas. Lord Krishna is the supreme being. He is therefore most worshipable. This is the essence of the Vedas. This is what Krishna is revealing in these verses. So remember this. By remembering this, we'll bring perfection to our lives. So these chapters are invaluable. So my suggestion is that you should hear this, and after that you should hear again, and you should go back and you should read these verses, and you should absorb all this knowledge and information, and then we will begin to connect with the Lord, and that's how we will perfect our lives. That is what Krishna has given this Bhagavad Gita to us for. So we come to the end of this session, and I would like you to write down 3 ways that you will acknowledge how you will acknowledge your gratitude for all that God has done for us. So God created the whole cosmos in a way that we can live. He helped with the nutritious food. He helps us with digestion. He helps us when we change bodies. He helps us if we want to go back to Him. In all the ways, Krishna is helping us. At every moment of our life, Krishna is helping. Krishna is actually maintaining us. So that is for the Lord, and He's been doing it selflessly. How can we acknowledge? How can we express our gratitude? 3 ways. There are 3 ways you can express your gratitude for all what Lord has done for you. So if you can mention that in the comment box, I will be very grateful, and I like to read that, how you will do that. And if you have any questions or comments, please mention them in the comment section below of this video. And so we will just summarize this chapter. Whether it is our hotel to home, it is a temporary place of residence, and spiritual world is the eternal place. So material world is temporary. It is like a reflection of the eternal spiritual world. Krishna reveals that towards the end of this particular section. And one who understands this understands the Vedas. One who understands that this material was an inverted reflection. We heard that how the roots are on the top, and the branches and the leaves are down. On the top there is 4-headed Brahma, and then there are the Devatas and the Gandharvas and the Kinnaras and the Asuras and Rakshasas and Manushas, and then the beasts like the cows and the horses and the further lower species. So that is how they are distributed in this material world. But this material world is just a reflection of the eternal spiritual world, right? So, and if we understand this, then we really know the Vedas. And the second section, we saw that how the spiritual world and the material world, they have difference in qualities. There are characteristics of the spiritual world. And how can we really go from this material world to the spiritual world? We saw a formula where Krishna was talking about that how we need to set the goal to go to the spiritual world. How do we need to surrender to the Supreme Lord, and how we need to develop detachment, and we need to develop detachment from this material world, attachment to the Supreme Lord. So the characteristics of the material world and our lost connection with the Supreme Lord. Mamaivamso Jiva Loke, that we are fragmental part of the Supreme Lord. And then Krishna further explains that how is our maintainer. He maintains the cosmos so that we can maintain our body, we can maintain our mind, and we can maintain our soul, and we can survive in this material body. And not just this body, the next body. And if you want to go beyond that as well, Lord is our maintainer. And finally, the essence which is discussed in the last 5 verses, that there are 2 types of living entities. One is fallible. They want to independently enjoy the material world, and they always remain in this material world. And beyond this fallible are the living entities in the spiritual world which are infallible. Why? Because they always want to be with the Lord. They always want to serve the Lord. They never leave the spiritual world. They are eternally perfect, infallible living entities. But beyond these fallible and infallible living entities is the Supreme Lord, Krishna, right? And when Vedas talk about the Supreme Person, it actually indicates the Supreme Lord. It indicates Krishna. So, if we know Krishna, if we know Bhagavad Gita, and through Bhagavad Gita, if we know Krishna, if we understand the Supreme Lord, then we know everything. That is Purushottam Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. So with that, I'd like to take your leave. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All the best.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna,